Hi, my name's Jordan Wain, UK Policy Lead for Chainalysis, and I just want to take a few minutes to talk to you about some key developments worth taking note of when it comes to the disruption of economic crime and the role of crypto assets in the UK. At the end of October, the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Bill, ECCT for short, was finally agreed to by both Houses of Parliament and became an Act of Parliament entering into UK law. Now, this act is pretty significant, bringing in a raft of changes to combat economic crime, from comprehensive Companies House reforms right through to what we're most interested in, which is additional powers for law enforcement over crypto assets suspected of being involved in criminal activity. But as important as this act is for both law enforcement and for those businesses that will be impacted, which I'll get onto, first I want to put the act into a bit of context to show you the bigger picture of what's happening in the UK.
Now, the story when it comes to crypto in the UK is one of growing scrutiny across a number of different areas, where we're seeing the government, lawmakers and policymakers start to recognise that there needs to be real regulatory and legislative change to tighten the screw on those seeking to take advantage of crypto assets. Take, for example, in the financial services world, the October 2023 extension of financial promotions rules to crypto assets, which at their core restrict who can market crypto and bring in additional rules around how they can be marketed to UK citizens. What this shows is the FCA want to ensure that firms are punished where they are found to be issuing potentially harmful promotions via websites, social media or apps. Showing just how serious the FCA are about these new rules, as of late October, we have already seen 221 firms added to the warning list. But if we look even further beyond the financial services regulated world and the FCA, we're also witnessing the UK Law Commission commit to a moment of real introspection in considering how UK law itself might need to be updated to accommodate for crypto. These are just two examples that show the scale and pace of what's happening around crypto across so many different areas that make the UK a really unique place to be right now. There are in fact three drivers of change in the economic crime space that I think you should be aware of and that I want to discuss over the next few minutes in more detail. Now, starting with the elephant in the room, the ECCT Act that I previously mentioned. This act potentially changes the rules of the game when it comes to law enforcement agencies' ability to crack down on crypto-related crime more effectively and efficiently than they may have otherwise been able to in the past. Alongside the crypto-focused amendments, the Act contains a long list of really pivotal additions and amendments that aim to really beef up the legislative side of the fight against economic crime. For example, it introduces the controversial new failure to prevent fraud offence that will see firms punished if they're seen not to sufficiently safeguard against fraud. The Act also sees Companies House receive more powers to check, remove or decline suspicious entries on their register, and it also strengthens anti-money laundering powers to help facilitate better information sharing powers about suspected offences, which will potentially allow businesses to share more information more easily for the purpose of investigating or detecting economic crime. And when it comes to intelligence gathering, the National Crime Agency will have a greater ability to request information from firms without having to rely on a suspicious activity report that they've already received. But the biggest news for us is what the Act actually means for crypto, with its decisive expansion of the focus of economic crime to include it for the very first time. Now, when it comes to the crypto asset related rules, the rationale provided by the government is that these changes are needed to modernise legislation and to tackle what is a real and growing potential threat, naming ransomware criminals specifically as those that are using crypto assets as part of their modus operandi to move, hide or use the proceeds of crime. Practically speaking, the Act makes amendments to parts 2, 3, 4, 5 and 8 of the Proceeds of Crime Act, meaning that criminal, civil and supplementary investigative powers will apply to crypto like they already do to cash and listed assets. This means that once the Act passes into the UK statute book, law enforcement agencies will be able to seize, store and potentially sell and destroy crypto as part of investigations at greater speed and in more situations than currently possible. So crypto firms, specifically exchanges and wallet providers, could be liable for criminal and civil seizure and recovery orders where their platforms are suspected of moving or storing crypto related to criminal activity. This means that law enforcement won't have to waste potentially valuable time and leave assets on the table with suspects that could be moved out of their reach. Instead, they can seize them there and then during an investigation without the need to arrest an individual for committing an offence first. In practice, by opening up the civil action route with a lower burden of proof and by expanding criminal powers, we could see an uptick in seizures and confiscations, which could be a real boost for all law enforcement under the terms of ARIS. The public sector, the law enforcement agencies, will need to familiarise themselves with these measures, while equally, on the flip side, firms will need to think about what they need to do to familiarise themselves with these changes and the additional costs that this will bring, particularly how they might want to respond to potential requests for information and how they might be obliged to respond to court orders. Now, the second key development that I want to talk about is the second economic crime plan, which was released earlier this year. And in short, this plan is the government very clearly setting out its stall on economic crime and how it intends to tackle it in all its forms, whether that be money laundering, fraud, sanctions evasion, or corruption, and regardless of who the perpetrator is, whether kleptocrat, serious organised criminal group, or otherwise. The plan outlines 43 different actions stating who must do what by when and bringing together all of the legislative, all of the procedural and all of the operational actions, whether funding focused, capacity related or tool focused, that are either planned or underway and are intended to disrupt economic crime. When we look at the actions related specifically to crypto, they can be bucketed into one of two things. One, they're focused on making legislative or regulatory change that can help agencies tackle criminals. Or two, they're focused on resources, people, capacity, and tools to make sure that with all of the new and existing powers, agencies have the support they need. In its own way, the plan is just a framework that's about connecting all of the dots of what's happening on economic crime, and a framework that's expressly focused on implementation, making sure that all of these moving parts actually happen. Now, in terms of what I like about this plan, number one, it shines a light on a lot of what is already underway in the UK when it comes to tackling money launderers, uncovering scammers and taking down fraudsters, whether those crimes are through traditional channels in normal currency or via more digital channels in crypto, all of which are increasingly being used to make victims of UK citizens. Number two, the plan is a potentially really powerful narrative tool. Yes, it's about making sure government departments and agencies know what they're responsible for and when they need to get them done by, but it's also about improving the public and political engagement with economic crime and elevating the awareness of it. And number three, when it comes to crypto, there are a few timely actions in there which cut right across policy making, supervision and enforcement, ensuring that the right funding, insights, data and tools get where they're needed. What is clear from the plan is that there is a commitment not only to ensure that policies and legislation are fit for purpose, but also that when it comes to implementation, lessons are learnt from what others have done and emerging best practices are known, adopted and applied. The last development that I want to touch on is the economic crime levy that went live at the start of September 2023. Now, this is something we haven't seen with previous initiatives or plans. It's a funding framework designed specifically to make all of the nice things that the economic crime plan talks about actually happen. In and of itself, it's a strong recognition from the government that in practice, tackling economic crime is an expensive business and that money is needed to disrupt it. The levy also shows that going forward, the private sector will be expected to play a key central role in the fight against economic crime, and in this case, it will be expected to fund it. Under the levy, an annual charge will apply to AML-CFT supervised firms in the UK, whether under HMRC, the Gambling Commission, the FCA, or any one of the 22 professional body supervisors, and it will include crypto firms. At a conservative estimate, it's expected that this will raise around £100 million per year to be funneled directly back into supporting the fight against economic crime and all of the actions outlined in the bill. Now, this may seem like a drop in the ocean of economic crime where losses are many times larger, but it will certainly help improve the chances of higher asset recovery when considered in tandem with ARIS, which will see the redistribution of an even greater portion of resources to those agencies involved in the recovery process.
So, those are the three key legislative and regulatory drives of change that I see right now: the ECCT Act, the Economic Crime Plan, and the Economic Crime Levy. I hope that I've given you a sense that we are riding a real wave of positive momentum and activity in the UK when it comes to disrupting economic crime and how crypto is increasingly coming into scope. Two things I would not have expected maybe a year ago, which gives me real hope as we move towards the end of the year. As we move into 2024, I hope that we continue to see the same kind of commitment from government, lawmakers and policymakers that has finally got the ECCT Act over the line, and that there is continued focus on disrupting economic crime and supporting that disruption, as well as cracking down on the use of crypto assets as part of that.